I'm Stephen Beekler, the chair of the Department of Applied and Computational Math and Statistics at Notre Dame. Students, when choosing a major, will often ask us, what can somebody do with a degree in math, applied math, or statistics? We know that many of our graduates have gone on to very successful careers in actuarial science. And like many faculty, I know the math and statistics that an actuary uses, but not the types of problems they're solving in the business world or the companies in which they may work. One such alumni is Mr. Ed Delahanty, Fellow of the Society of Actuaries and retired managing partner at Aon Hewitt & Associates. Recently, Mr. Delahanty, his son and daughter-in-law, all three actuaries, offered to host a seminar at which they answer the question, what does an actuary do? So this evening, we're very pleased to welcome back to Notre Dame Mr. David Delahanty, class of '86 and senior consultant at Towers Watson, and Ms. Nicole Delahanty, senior consultant at Jeffrey Slocum and Company. They will answer the question, what does an actuary do?
So always start off mathematics presentations with numbers, because people seem to like them. So 1986 was the year that I graduated from the University of Notre Dame with a degree in mathematics, and there were 14 math majors that graduated that year. 3 of us went into actuarial science. So now you can see, so that's the 14. Now I understand there's almost 100 students majoring in some form of mathematics, whether it's majoring, minoring, concentrating, whatever it is. So that number has just grown dramatically. The number 1, in addition to the ranking of the football team, in 1986, U.S. News and World Report came out with the ranking of the top jobs in the United States. And actuary was the number 1 job rated in the United States. And it continues to this day to be ranked in the top 10 of all jobs based on level of stress, pay, knowledge, speciality, and things like that. So it's still a very high-ranking job, very well respected. $60,000 is around a ballpark of what the starting salaries of actuaries are who come out of school now with an exam or two. So it's a very well-paying profession as well, and we'll actually get into that a little bit more in the future. And 0, as I'm sure you know, is the total number of combined losses for the 2012 Notre Dame women's basketball team and the 2012 men's football program. So I hope to see all of you at 2013 at the championships in New Orleans and in Miami. Go Irish. So the title of this presentation is Oh, the Places You'll Go, and it's one of my favorite Dr. Seuss books. It's actually published in 1990. And there's a line that I really like that talks a little bit about what actuaries can do. It says, you have brains in your head, you have feet in your shoes, you can steer yourself any direction you choose. So tonight we're going to talk about directions that you can take with an actuarial degree. And the place that this really started was the Society of Actuaries in 2003 and in 2005 did public surveys of how actuaries were viewed across a broad spectrum of people. And at that time, what they found was that actuaries were viewed as being fairly narrow, fairly technical, and without good business communication skills. They were viewed as being not promotable to senior management. They were viewed as being sort of too technical. Since then, the Society of Actuaries and other actuarial bodies have taken it upon themselves to change that perception. And the 2 things that they did that were really profound, one is they actually developed a tagline for the Society of Actuaries. And the tagline now is risk is opportunity. So it sounds kind of cool. Risk and opportunity going together, as opposed to just bad things happening to people and actuaries figuring out how often that's going to happen. The other thing they did was they changed the examination structure so that it's much more real world, more web-based, more course-based. So it became much more practical in terms of what's being taught and the type of education you come out with at the other end when you become an actuary. So what are the 3 things that sort of define what an actuary does? It all starts, first concept is probability, P of X. Number is somewhere between 0 and 1 for every future event. So what actuaries do, the first thing they do is to predict future events. And how do they predict them? Well, they have different sources of data. So they might look at past data. They might look at historical experience, what's happened before. They might simulate the future. So you might have past data, you might look at something that might simulate the future, and then you might have to make assumptions about how the past is different from now or how the future might be different than it was in the past. So you're combining all those things into a probability that something is going to happen. So some of the examples, these first 2 are pretty low probability. The hurricane almost got to South Bend when Superstorm Sandy came through. It didn't quite get here. Probability you could get your car stolen, and somebody have to pay for that. Or the big probability, this is actually a probability of 1, is that I, for example, broke my finger freshman year, first week on campus. And that was not my finger. That's actually just the clip art. But the probability was 1 that day, and I have never again played 16-inch softball. So that's a probability. The second thing we do is take probabilities and try to determine what the financial impact of that probability is. Okay, so we take a probability of something happening and figure out what the financial consequence is of that happening. So it's easy for some of these things. You figure out, okay, well, there's a probability, first example, your car gets stolen. The financial consequences, what's your car worth? You multiply those two together and you come up with some sort of an insurance premium, right? That's pretty easy. But then you start to talk about, okay, what about things like auto insurance on the liability side and collision side? So you get in a car accident, as this poor chump did. All of the financial consequences are down below. Your car is damaged, right? So now we have to pay somebody to fix your car. You might need a rental car. There's going to be cash going out to a rental car company. You could be injured. So you might have medical bills that would have to be covered. You might injure somebody else. So now I've got a claim of liability. You've also got to pay for their injuries. You might hit a stop sign or a fire hydrant. So now you've got a property damage claim. Or the other person's car might be damaged. So there are a lot of different pieces that actuaries need to figure out, probabilities, and then projected financial outcomes, and then turn those into premiums or risks and try to figure out how to mitigate those risks. The third concept that actuaries deal with, we have probability, financial consequence, and then present value. And actuaries are really the only profession that deal with all three of these things. So accountants deal with pieces of it, statisticians deal with pieces of it, economists deal with pieces of it, but nobody does all three of these things. So you think about something, so the example here, your car gets stolen, that's pretty easy. Not a lot of present value of money involved there. But one of the broad categories that actuaries practice in is pension plans. So a pension plan, you can get hired by a company at age 25. You could work for them until you're 60, and they would pay you an annual payment every year until you're 90. You're talking about 65 years of projections, and they're projecting out what you're going to earn every year, your likelihood of terminating in a given year, your likelihood of becoming disabled, of passing away, when you're going to retire, what inflation is going to do to your benefit, what's going to happen to Social Security in that time. So it's a very complicated calculation when you start to include the present value, and then you have to discount all that back to today's date and figure out what's that worth, if you will. So that's the third piece that not a lot of other professions get into, is sort of the present value piece of what actuaries do. This is also why actuaries don't play the lottery very often. Because in the lottery, let's say that your odds of winning a lottery in the Powerball right now are about 1 in 100 million. And if the payout is, let's say, 75 million, that's generally paid over 30 years, $2.5 million a year. The actuaries know that's not worth $75 million. That's worth $35 or $40 million. And then you're paying taxes on that. So you're taking a 1 in 100 million chance to win maybe $15 or $20 million. To an actuary, that's something that they probably wouldn't do very often. So I always call lottery not a tax on the poor. It's always considered, to me, to be a tax on the actuarially challenged. So that's what an actuary does. And now Nicole is going to talk a little bit more about how to turn this into a happy thing, since I've talked about all the tough things that they do.
I know, it sounds so depressing. We got death, we got dismemberment, your car gets stolen. You think like this is what we deal with day in and day out, but it's really not true. There's really two sides of the story. There's, helping people insure the risks, whether it's their physical well-being or their financial well-being. It's creating products to help people really manage their livelihood. And then on the other side, helping institutions make money or profit off of that, and understand really, it's really our job to figure out which risks we want our companies to avoid, to manage, to try to reduce, or put some guardrails around, or transfer to somebody altogether. That's really a big part of our job. And so we can play in the individual world, helping individuals manage risk, or in the institutional world, helping a number of different companies with those risk-based type decisions. So let's talk about first traditional opportunities. Dave mentioned before that historically actuaries have worked in a traditional framework, and actually the Society of Actuaries, who does the surveys about what actuaries do today, they reported back that around 90% work in traditional roles. like health insurance, life insurance, property or casualty insurance, or pension plans, dealing with understanding how to help a company structure a program so that their employees can retire in an orderly fashion with enough money to sustain their standard of living. All those four areas are pretty traditional, but even within them, there's a ton of innovation that you can see. All the way from developing new products through to marketing and sales of those ideas, all the way through to senior executive roles. So actuaries might start off in a technical capacity, but really bring a fair amount of creativity to either the development of products, the marketing, or the running of the overall business. And typically in traditional roles, you're seeing career opportunities in 3 different areas. Employee benefits firms that virtually every company in the United States and globally will hire to help them figure out, how do we structure a rewards program for employees? How do we recruit and retain the right people and put employee benefits in place so that they can feel secure that they've got health insurance, life insurance, and retiree benefits throughout their career? Or insurance companies that actually take on that risk on behalf of other companies. And the third being academia. Of course, there's a huge effort in staying current and training the next generation of actuaries. So in addition to those traditional opportunities, I always like to talk about non-traditional opportunities. While only 10% of actuaries play in this space, this is sort of my area, my passion. I started out in a very traditional role and have actually dabbled in a number of these different areas. And it really gets to the point that, you know, you can apply those principles of understanding risk, understanding how to quantify that risk financially, and then figuring out what that means in today's dollars to figure out, do you want to trade that risk or take it on? Let's take an example of executive pay. So every company has a big C-suite, a bunch of executives, the CEO, CFO, Chief Administrative Officer, that have huge pay packages. And a big part of them is typically stock options. So stock options are valued based on how that stock might move over a period of time, the volatility of that stock, how long that executive might hold those shares, and how to value that in present value terms. Actuaries are in a fantastic position to figure out how to value that, combining it with compensation programs and other benefits to figure out, is that the right structure that we should be giving our CEO, our CFO, or the other senior executives that we want to recruit. There's other areas like weather forecasting. Or you think back to what Dave talked about earlier about, you know, how do we figure out what's going to happen in the future? Oftentimes we're starting with what happens in the past. So predictive modeling can play a huge role in figuring out weather patterns or weather-related events to then predict those events, what might happen, whether you're going to insure against them, or whether that's just a matter of informing the public as a public safety element. Currency hedging is another area. You know, most companies today are multinational in you know, having operations and revenue being generated around the globe. Typically, as the revenue is made across the globe, it's then getting transported back into U.S. dollars. That's a risk that companies in the U.S. have. Actuaries can be positioned to help companies hedge against that risk and figure out how to really solidify the dollars that they might be pulling back in U.S. terms. And then finally, from an individual standpoint, so while we might help companies broadly manage risks, put together pay packages, figure out how to hedge, whether it's currency risk or interest rate risk, individuals themselves have sort of a mini set of those risks. And so we really see the future of financial planning being not just around helping people figure out what kind of stocks and bonds and insurance they need to buy, but the idea of a personal actuary helping you figure out how long you might live, how do you figure out how do you figure out what you need to live in retirement and transfer wealth to future generations and manage that process over a period of time.
Yeah, I'll talk about one as well, the supply chain and logistics idea, the very last one. One of my clients is a firm called Conagra Foods, and they make all different types of consumer packaged food products. one of the foods that they make is Slim Jims. And they make Slim Jims in one plant in Garner, North Carolina. You may have read in December 2009 that plant had a small explosion. An ammonia leak caused part of the plant to blow up, which was a problem for ConAgra Foods because the Slim Jim plant was only made in one place in that Garner, North Carolina plant. So they had insurance, fortunately, that allowed them to hedge for the business interruption of not having Slim Jims on the shelves so that every convenience store in the United States would be able to carry their product. But they had insurance to be able to allow them to mitigate the risk of that happening, which allowed them to only have it built in one, or have them put together in one plant so they could run their business more appropriately, but they had the risk mitigated, so it helped them with their own sort of supply chain and logistics issues.
One wouldn't think that Slim Jims are that important, but apparently bad things
big
happen
issue.
when people can't get their Slim Jims. Very important risk to insure against. So, to take that further, where might you work? Originally we talked about traditional roles being employee benefit companies, insurance companies, or in academia, but really every company out there across a multitude of industries can benefit from an actuary in one capacity or other. We talked about currency hedging or managing the interest rate risk of a debt that a company might hold or a loan portfolio. That's a huge area in banking of banks coming in to help companies figure out how to manage those risks. If you think about transportation and managing a logistics operation, you can see the use of an actuary in trucking or even in airline management, figuring out how to hedge fuel costs and manage that risk, while at the same time understanding seasonality and how to maximize the price per seat and the risks that come along with that. I'm going to talk in a second about hospital when we take you through a day in the life, but virtually every industry, all the way up through to government, given the massive pools of assets that are set aside to help with managing Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and understanding how aging demographics, how as people age and we start to all look like Florida, the stress that's going to put on the system and how those programs are going to be funded. That's just it's a huge actuarial problem on a massive scale. So let me take you through a day in the life of an actuary. And so this is, I wanted to give you a sense of, we're going to leave this presentation today and drive back into Chicago, and I'm going to meet with one of my larger clients, which is a hospital system. And I'm going to spend a day with them doing strategic planning. And you'll see we're kind of pulling from a lot of different areas, but what we do is we'll sit down and we'll start with their business plan and look at, for a 5-year period, what might their revenues look like? What will the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, do to their top line revenue in terms of revenues that they might get from patients, from the insurance industry, from Medicare and Medicaid, and we'll project that out. Then we'll look at their balance sheet. It's about $1 billion of assets that are set aside to help manage the operations of this hospital, and carve out a pool to make sure that we've got enough cash on hand to manage the daily operations of this organization for a period of time. And then we'll look at, what do they want to do in the next 5 years? Are they looking to acquire hospitals? Are they looking to build out or get in new technology for certain areas that they're expanding in certain areas of medical technology? And we'll structure the investment pool to try to meet a targeted return to help them grow that investment pool to manage those types of expenses over a period of time. So it's true, it's asset liability modeling in the context of a hospital system that has liabilities that they have on their balance sheet, debts. They have an uncertain top line revenue stream with everything that's going on from a regulatory standpoint, and then a huge pool of assets to figure out how to best manage those liabilities and manage towards the growth of the company. And then we do what we love to do best. We model and we stress test, and we try to figure out what happens if another 2008 event rolls around. Will we have enough cash in our liquidity pool to meet operations that are happening on a daily basis, keeping the doors of the hospital open? How about the pool of assets that we've targeted for growth that are going to be invested far more aggressively? If we layer on those scenarios, will we be able to hit our growth targets, our acquisition targets? And we're looking for combinations of assets and looking at risks at the top line of the company to try to secure with as with as much certainty as possible that we can keep the hospital running and then hit those growth targets for a long period of time. And I think, while it's an exciting day knowing that you're helping a company with a strategic plan that has, far-reaching effects on a community from a health standpoint, probably the biggest challenge is then stepping back from all the numbers and then helping that team of executives go to their board and get sign off and buy-in for all the strategies that we put in place and translate everything that we do from a technical standpoint, all the modeling, all the stress testing, somehow in layman's terms that makes sense to a very diversified board, some that might not be at all into the numbers or know what an actuary does or a financial engineering consultant does. So full circle, we wanted to give you a sense of the different types of risk, how they're managed, modeled in a real world setting, and how we've used our background and experience in trying to help our clients think through those and then present them to the various stakeholders within those organizations.
Does anybody have any questions right now based on what we've talked about? We've got more slides, but we've been talking for a while, and I thought people might want to ask questions if anybody has anything. No? Good? Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. So now that Nicole sort of told you where she goes and what she's doing, what will you do if you decide to become an actuary? So you can see the first bullet here. Every business could benefit from having an actuary on staff. We are unique in what we do. We are combining skills that no other profession actually combines, which makes us sort of special in the world of being able to figure out what a company or a business or an enterprise needs to do and then translating that into how they can grow and how they can protect themselves and how they can make their businesses better. So someday, in theory, just like every company has an accountant that reports up to a controller that manages a whole accounting function, what the theory is within the Society of Actuaries is that at some point every company could have a chief risk operator that would help to manage, or a chief risk officer that would help to manage all the risks of the business, all the risks from, you think about any organization, so a credit card fraud in a retail organization, you could think about risks of the supply chain things that we talked about, of worker shortages, any sort of risks, there would be somebody there to sort of manage and monitor exactly what's going on. And I mentioned earlier that the new motto for the Society of Actuaries is risk is opportunity. I always think of that as, instead of those three words, I think of it as change is good. So anytime there's a change in legislation or in demographics or in companies' makeup, it's good for actuaries. So for example, I don't really care what your politics are on the whole healthcare reform and Obamacare and all that, but it's been a huge boon for consultants, trying to help interpret what it means for all of our clients, trying to figure out if they should continue to offer benefits to their employees or just pay somebody else to take on those benefits, whether they should move all of their employees onto these new healthcare exchanges in 2014 or continue to offer benefits like they always have. So that sort of change, external, creates pressure on our clients. They come to us and then we help them solve the problem of what they should be doing. So the change is good. If you are interested, there's actually a YouTube video on the Society's website called The Competitive Advantage. There are several videos. This is actually the one that I like the best. And if you want to watch it, they'll just sort of talk about actuaries and how the role of an actuary has a competitive advantage over all the different professions, the other professions that you might be considering as you go through your career search. So just to think, if you think about some of the benefits of becoming an actuary, I think there are a lot of them. The first one is sort of interesting, which is, as an actuary, you start, after your undergrad, you graduate, you could be working June, July, August, right away, and you're making money. You're not going to law school, you're not paying money to go to a law school, MBA school, you're not, and you're not in a school where you're not having a job, you're actually getting paid to study. You're getting paid to, your employer will actually pay to take your exams. Okay, so all the exams, the study because everything is paid for. They'll give you time off to study, which is just awesome. And they also give you exams, increases and bonuses when you pass your exams. It's like, why wouldn't I do this, right? I mean, they're paying me to do it, and they're paying me to take time off to study, and they're paying me to sort of grow my career and my credentials. So it's called earn while you learn. The work is very interesting. I think Nicole's described for you what her day is like. There are a variety of avenues to choose from, a lot of different things you can do. I don't know if there was a movie out 10, 15 years ago called About Schmidt, and Jack Nicholson actually played an actuary. I mean, Jack Nicholson, come on. I mean, he's cool, right? I don't know. So there's a lot of newsworthy things that go on. If you're reading anything about the legislation that's going through on healthcare reform, you hear people talk about how actuaries are projecting this. If you read anything on Social Security and where that's going, you read about actuarial testimony. You'll read expert witness testimony from actuaries. It's just a very developing and growing area. It also is a career where the services are protected from ups and downs. So anytime, even in a downturn, there's a need for actuaries to help employers prevent and protect their risks. So it's a lot of demand no matter what. And the Department of Labor actually predicts that the employment of actuaries is going to continue to increase by 24% by 2016. So what is that? 4% a year growth in actuarial. I mean, there's a lot of demand for actuaries going forward. And the next slide actually shows some of the benefits. So even the internet agrees. There are several websites out there that can tell you that the actuarial career and actuarial professions are very positive and very in demand, and actuaries really seem to enjoy their jobs. So one of the benefits is that your pay would start at a fairly high level and continue to increase as you pass exams. So you can see it starts in the $50,000, $60,000 range and would increase fairly quickly over time. So the benefits of becoming an actuary, you start right after graduation, start right on in your career, you do interesting work, you're in demand, and you can make decent money doing it too. So I know that when we talked about the actuarial word earlier and how it was sort of highly technical and people weren't very good at communications, I think a lot of that has reversed and it's become a very hot field right now.
So, taking a step further, how do you become one? I mean, you guys are obviously taking the first step with this coming to our presentation today, so good job there. But you want to plan pretty heavy course load in math, stats, actuarial science, and really we would recommend expanding that further, taking some business courses, taking public speaking or communication, because even if you're in a highly, highly technical area of the actuarial profession, you still need to figure out how to communicate those ideas, even if it's just to an internal audience. So we'd recommend a really well-rounded curriculum. And I had the pleasure of doing recruiting for Towers Watson for 10 years, and so got to see a lot of different students and sat down with some of the other folks across the country to figure out what is the profile that we're looking for. Obviously, everybody's very smart. They're good at math. They know how to pass exams, whether that's in school or in the actuarial program, but what are some of the other things, the intangibles that we're looking for? And I would say, you guys probably all did something special to get into the University of Notre Dame, whether it was, through volunteer work or something else. You really need the same thing as that edge to get into within a great company or a consulting firm. So, start with a great coursework, expand that with some business classes, and then figure out what's your passion and show some commitment and dedication to that. It goes a really long way in the recruiting process, as does passing an exam before you actually get into a company that's going to support you through that exam structure. Typically, for an intern position, we like to see one exam or at least an attempt or an understanding of the process, and by the time you're applying for a full-time position, at least one exam, if not two. We really like to see a commitment that you understand what the program's like, and that you've made some progress towards it. And then, of course, find a mentor, find somebody out in industry in an area that you're interested in, and don't be shy. Google stalk them, figure out how to connect with people in the area. And I think you'll find that the actuarial community is really open, and they want to see people progress and be committed to the area. There's also some great websites. So beanactuary.org is one of them. I think they've got scholarship forms and additional information. The Society of Actuaries, so SOA.org, is a great resource, although that's tailored a little bit more to professionals that have been working for a long period of time. The riskisopportunity.net is more the promoting site of getting into what are all the areas that actuaries can practice in. And again, that beanactuary.org is a good resource for you.
So we started off this conversation talking about all the places you'll go, and my favorite quote about having brains in your head and your feet in your shoes, and you can go on any path that you choose. This is my other favorite quote. So once you've decided what you're going to do it today. Get it going. There's no reason to wait. Start your actuarial future by, as Nicole said, talking to mentors, figuring out more about the profession, going on the websites, and develop your passion for it, just like we did. So that's all we had for prepared materials. Are there any questions? Anything anybody would like to ask about? Yeah.
When most of you guys were in college and school, did you know that you wanted to be actuaries, or was it kind of like a different path that you ended up taking?
So I'll repeat the question. You can answer first. So the question was, when we were in school, did we know we wanted to be actuaries right off the bat? So you can answer first, and then I'll answer.
Well, I kind of have an embarrassing story, and I'm slightly terrified that this is being taped. But I believe in honesty, so I'm going to share it with you. I was sitting in my guidance counselor's office, and it was I went to school in Canada, so it was grade 11 or 12, and they have this big book of jobs, and it's alphabetical, and so one page for each career, and in the bottom right-hand corner, there's the projected salary. And so I flipped through this book until I got to a number, and it was, I was just through the A's, and actuary. Oh, you need to be really great at math, you like statistics, you like to problem solve, and I thought, wow, that sounds really great. So I gave it a shot in the first year, and I never looked back.
So I took kind of the opposite approach. I come from a family of actuaries. My father's actually an actuary as well. So for me, there wasn't much of I didn't go through looking for astronaut, actor. I actually sort of knew I was always going to be good at math and that I was going to go into it. When I started off here at Notre Dame, I actually started in electrical engineering, though, and did not enjoy it as much as I thought I would. And so switched over to math my sophomore year and just loved it ever since. So. Yeah.
I had an actuary tell me that taking the exam is like a second job. Would you agree with that, or is that like an overstatement, you think?
It's a great question. So how did you view the exams? Was it like a second job, or what was it like?
It was a lot of work, definitely. But it's also, it's an extension of your college life a little bit, because you're coming into an organization typically with a number of different actuaries that are going through it with you. You've got time off. Typically you get 1 day a week off, about 3 months leading up to the exam. Then you usually take the week off before the exam. And so it's a little bit like, crunching for finals and studying for school while getting that support. But it's a big commitment, and it takes some time. I think to get through the ASA program, it's typically 3 to 4 years, and then maybe another couple years to go all the way through to fellowship. But you're usually there with people that are going through it with you. So I look back on it fondly. As you're going through it, it's probably a little bit more work than what I remember it to be, though.
I would agree. It's there are generally 2 exams per year, so they're generally May and November. So from the time from say March, April, May, you're cramming, and then September, October, November, you're cramming. So you got 6 months of the year when you're working really hard. It is almost like working 2 jobs at that point. But there's 6 months of the year when you just got your regular job as well, and you can do all the things that you love to do during those times. But we've got a friend that actually at one point said taking the exams was like wearing a pair of cowboy boots that was 3 sizes too small, because at the end of the day you take them off and it just feels so good to be done. And it's something you work through, but as opposed to law school or MBA school, you're getting paid while you're doing it, you're learning in your career, you're sort of growing as a professional as well while you're taking the exam. So that's what we like. That's what I liked about it.
Yeah, and I think, with any career where you're going to be driven and you really want to fast track your career, you're going to be working hard regardless. And whether you self-study or do a lot of reading or just work a lot of late nights, this is a substitute for that, and it's in more of an academic framework with learning through, going through the courses, and then combining that with the practical experience that you're getting during the day.
That's a good question.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What are you looking at for hours of work per week?
Fair question. Yeah, I would say it depends on the type of firm you go to work for. So Nicole outlined employee benefits firms, insurance consulting firms, and academia. I don't know what academia would be like because I've never worked there, but we both worked insurance companies and consulting firms. Insurance companies tend to be low 40s, so 40 to 43, 44. Consulting firms tend to be 45 to 50. And then, like we said, you have to study on top of that too. But you do get, like Nicole said, you'll get a day off per week to study leading up to the exam, and you'll get time off before and during the exam to study as well. So it can be demanding if you choose a benefits field. If you choose the insurance route, it's a little bit easier, but you'll get more time to study then as well.
Yeah, I mean, typically in an insurance company, you've got just a far more structured day. Whereas when you're working in consulting, you're a little bit at the mercy of your clients. When your clients are going through a merger or an acquisition, it's sort of all hands on deck. And so you've got to be more flexible with your time and better with your time management. So it's all really, I mean, it's a big part of what do you like to do? Do you like to be with people? And then do you want more of a flexible, dynamic work environment, or do you need more structure? That might lend it to those two environments.
Yeah.
Sorry, you go first. Okay. You said you started as an electrical engineer and then you switched over. I'm just curious. I'm a freshman, so I'm wondering if you need. Is this something you need to start like right away, or is it can you like you did your sophomore year? Was that like difficult? Did you have to take? I know engineering you really can't start later.
Right.
Right now, so I'm wondering if it's that kind of thing.
Well, I took the electrical engineering classes my first semester of sophomore year and then switched over a second semester. So I don't know about the curriculum here as well as the rest of you.
It's very easy to switch from engineering into, or one of the other sciences into math or ACMS in the sophomore year. Because in the first year you're taking calculus, you're taking the same classes. So it's not a hard transition.
Yeah, another question?
So do you take people from different backgrounds, or do you prefer math and finance majors?
Oh, good question. So do we prefer math and finance majors, or do we take people from different backgrounds?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think, a lot of the firms want to see the commitment to the exam program. So provided that you've got that, having a more diverse background could actually be an advantage because everybody kind of looks the same and is coming from the same place. And that's why we said it's great to go and get some of those other courses to round out your experience. I'll tell you, one of the people that I managed that got a 1600 on her SATs and had 2 exams coming in was in nuclear physics. That's what her degree was in. But she kind of found her way to this profession, and it was a very unique way to get there. That's one example of kind of getting there in a non-traditional way. But, I think we would kind of hold firm that showing commitment to the exam program is probably the most important thing in crossing that line and getting employed.
Yes.
How long did it take you to do it through like all the exam process?
How long? So, the question was, how long did it take us to get through the exam process? I did not make it all the way through the FSA. I got through the ASA and became enrolled, which is sort of like 3/4 of the way done. It took me, I had 2 exams done when I got out of college. It took me another 3 years after that, and then I was done.
And I went through from an ASA to an FSA and then also got another certification called an enrolled actuary, and it took me about 6.5 years.
So there are
And,
stopping points along the way. If you want to get through the first level of exams, the ASA, you'll do very well, but you won't do as well as you would as an FSA.
Although Dave's being modest, I think he got to an ASA and he was already running the office, so he was off too busy to continue on with the exam process at that point in time. I can brag because he's my husband.
All right. Well, if there aren't any more questions, we actually have some pamphlets up here that we got from the Society of Actuaries that explain a little bit more about what it's like to be an actuary, both a day in the life of and then start talking about preparations for becoming an actuary. And it will hopefully get at some of the questions around how can you prepare and what do you need to think about and all that sort of thing. So feel free to grab these as you're taking off. So thank you so much all for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you. As you can tell, we're very passionate about the career, and I hope that we can instill that a little bit of that in you too as well.